On today's show, it appears that Rasmus Sandin will be good to go for Caps versus Blues, and good news surrounding Pierre-Luc Dubois. It does not appear to be a season-ending injury.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the past 4 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the good news, somewhat, that Pierre-Luc Dubois' injury does not appear to be a season-ending injury. What's the latest? A bit later, we'll talk about how Alex Ovechkin's slow start affects the Capitals' big picture. I'm talking goal scoring. But just to get it going here, talking about the Blues preview, the game that is on deck Wednesday night, Blues at Capitals. And this is a good game for the Capitals to get right what's going wrong with the team, right? That losing 4 straight, the power play that's deplorable, Pierre-Luc Dubois that's injury. It doesn't appear that a lot of things are going right for the Capitals right now. And the one thing I know about the Blues, well, the Blues are not playing some of their best hockey this season either. However, they only have one game to get that right, as they are going to be taking on a big opponent in their arch nemesis, I guess you could say, in the Pittsburgh Penguins. But let's talk about it as the Caps prepare to take on the Blues. And what did we notice at practice? Well, the biggest news, of course, is Rasmus Sandin looks like he's on track to play tomorrow. And that is a legit boost for the blue line. And, when you have to start reaching into depth, sometimes those things can go off the track in a hurry. And if you take a look at the matchup, the Blues play heavy. They like to pin you along the boards, and they want to create traffic in front of their goalie. So having a guy like Sandin back means the Caps get more mobility on the back end. I know that in this show I talk about the lack of offense, but, with Rasmus Sandin, closing it down on the back end there as well, not to mention that he sometimes chips in on the offense as well. But like I said, gets more mobility on the back end. In bigger picture here, it helps with exits. It helps on the second power play unit. It helps the stretch pass and moves the puck the way that Sandin does so well. And, oftentimes we talk about, goal scorers, forwards. I'm talking wingers, centers out of the mix, maybe a goalie. But having your defense buttoned up the way that you had it sketched out in the beginning of the season is huge. Okay, so how does the defense stack up right now? What we saw at Tuesday's practice, Faravari with Carlson, Chikrin with Roy, Sandin with TVR, and then Chisholm and McElrath as the extras on the back end. So, as far as the way things were sketched out to start the season, we're darn near where it was all sketched out. And that depth mix gives Coach Carbery some matchup flexibility and hopefully alleviates some of the pressure on some of the backenders, the blue liners. I'm talking Carlson and Chikrin, so potentially they don't have to play quite so many minutes. And how it affects, you can adjust your play depending on who the Blues throw out there. If the Blues throw out their heavy line, you can use Sandin skating to try to neutralize their cycle. Conversely, if the Blues try to play small and quick, then you can match speed and get pucks behind their defense. On the forward side, the lines we saw on the sheet were kind of interesting as well. Ovechkin with Strome and Beauvillier. Again, I spoke about in yesterday's show. I think that's a pretty good matchup, all things considered, or a good line, if you will. And what is that? That's a veteran unit that needs, to own the ice in the offensive zone. That is your offensive line. It hasn't been so much the case for Alex Ovechkin, but historically, that is a line that gets some production. So hopefully, the way that line is constructed, we will see the offense show up. The second line, of course, is Protas, McMichael, and Wilson. Third line, Milano, LaPierre, and Leonard, and Duhaime, Dowd, and Sordiff on the fourth line with Smallman and Frank as the extras. But just to take a look at the second line, that is the one that has the big impact, of course, because Pierre-Luc Dubois is out of the mix. The second line with Protas and McMichael is going to be a real focal point for me in this game. They've got to be more consistent in possession. They have to sustain zone time, because when that line can chew up the neutral zone and get sustained pressure, the game gets that much easier for the top line as well. And, players that really need to step up, that this team is not playing that well in certain regards. And Tom Wilson is the guy that's getting a lot of it done. Watch Tom Wilson's role tomorrow. He is that physical presence that can tilt pucks to the net and create second chance opportunities as well. If Wilson is doing his thing, it opens up so much for the power play and the net front presence. And to tie it back here with Sandin as well, having Sandin back, the penalty kill rotation changes a little bit. Sandin's mobility helps the transition after blocked shots. So, having Sandin back in the mix as well has quite a ripple down effect as well. So if the Blues get power play time, the Caps have a better chance to get pucks out quickly and reset. But, as far as in terms of what that means for tomorrow, limit second chances. Win puck battles, force the Blues to attack from the outside and make them beat you through traffic. Clear the lane in front of Logan Thompson or Charlie Lindgren so that he's not getting screened. All things considered, Logan Thompson has done a good job this year. But, the big thing is, and the thing I've talked about on this show is to do the thing that's a non-negotiable for Spencer Carbery. Make it difficult on the opposing netminder. You take a look at some of these games that they didn't have to work that hard. I'm talking against the Stars. I'm talking against Ottawa. These kind of games in particular, that is a big thing. And, the last thing to keep an eye on as well is matchups late in the game. If it's close, which it could be, I want to see Carbery trust the veteran minutes and shorten the bench because the playoff style minutes matter in these tight physical matchups. So it's going to be interesting to see, how the Capitals fare. I look at these games and I'm like, well, surely they've got to beat the Islanders, and they fall to the Islanders. Surely they have to beat the Sabres, and they fall to the Sabres. So, and I think part of it, the power play as well, taking on water, that once it happens, I think then, a lot of pressure will be off the back of the Capitals players. It'll be like, yes, we finally got past that. And now we can go about the business of winning games, because I think the raw potential is still there. I know that Pierre-Luc Dubois out of the mix is a big loss, but there's still a lot of great players. And at the end of the day, I still think that general manager Chris Patrick should be, seeing what options there are out there, because, what we have seen thus far, I know we can talk to the power play, but big picture, the offense is not quite where it needs to be if we want to contend in an increasingly improving a Metro Division race. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Dubois out for the foreseeable future, but not season ending, and the ripple down effect that has with the line combos. I'll discuss straight ahead. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. That's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You can connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. So stop making excuses and avoid those awkward doctor visits and start living your best life. And you can do that with Rougiette. Visit RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in segment 2 here, we're talking about news from practice today. The press, meeting with Spencer Carbery, and they asked him on an update surrounding Pierre-Luc Dubois, who we found out on Monday. It was said that he is going to be out for the foreseeable future. Of course, we know he sustained that injury versus the Islanders. He's only played, 6 games all season. That it has been rough for Pierre-Luc Dubois. It has been rough for the Capitals. So what is the latest? And what is the ripple down effect with PLD out of the lineup? So this one matters. Pierre-Luc Dubois took that lower body hit and has been out for a while. The team's official line is it's not season ending, like I said. So that is the big thing. So, read that however you want. It's relief and it's concern at the same time. Concern in the regard that he is going to be out for the foreseeable future. It's a relief that it's not season ending. It's still really early in the season. We're not even to the Thanksgiving break, so a bit ambiguous as far as when we can expect. And, at this point, if they don't know, I don't want them to guess, but foreseeable seems like, quite a bit here. So when you take a look at it, there are immediate ripple effects. First, the big thing that you're going to notice is face-off. Dubois is a quality draw man. Losing him is a clear disadvantage in set plays and offensive zone starts. And you feel that the first minute of the period when deployment matters. And special teams has been a bugaboo, and face-offs, there's work that needs to be done there as well. That, having Pierre-Luc Dubois, whether, it's the power play, whether it's face-offs, having him out of the mix has quite a big impact. Second, driving play 5-on-5. Dubois is a center who can tilt play. I know that he hasn't put up big numbers, but he hasn't played a lot of games yet this season. He buries the puck into scoring areas and helps sustain pressure. And when that's gone, that's when it gets a bit more difficult. The team needs other guys to step up in puck retrieval and zone entries. And we have our guys circled, right? I talked about them in the first segment, that it's going to be Connor McMichael or Hendrix Lapierre, these kind of guys. I still think that if it is in fact going to be a bit, and it is going to be a bit, as I checked the standings before I hit record, we're still in the same position. We're still kind of swirling around the drain of the Metro. Like I said in yesterday's show, it's early enough that we can right the ship, but the more games that are lost, you can get out of it in a hurry. So what does that mean for the second line, and what players need to step up? Connor McMichael has been bumped into more of a prominent role, and this is an excellent opportunity for him to shine. Later in the show, I'll talk about what it means for a lot of players that are given a unique opportunity that may not have been given these opportunities had it not been for the ripple-down effect of Pierre-Luc Dubois' injuries. He's taking shifts as a second-line center, and that's a lot to ask. It's a development opportunity and a test at the same time. We know that the center position is his natural position, and he prefers to play there over the wing. So I don't think that necessarily would have happened if Pierre-Luc Dubois was in the mix. I know there was some thought about having him in as a third-line center, And I think that the Capitals, when this all gets sorted out, Pierre-Luc Dubois, whenever that might be, I think they would like to get sort of back to that center position. Another practical point is special teams, like I talked about. The Capitals have struggled, and when Dubois is out there, you have to be smart about who takes penalties and who kills them. You also have to be smarter about deployment in late game offensive situations where, let's face it, faceoffs matter. You can't just throw out who is ever on the next line without thinking about possession. And I say that Pierre-Luc Dubois has faced a decent amount of criticism from his time in Los Angeles with the Kings, and righted what was wrong in his career last season. But now we're kind of in a tough spot with him that he's injured. It's not his fault per se, but you really see the impact and how much he has grown from LA to Washington, and it's just a big void of who steps up. And, it's all about chemistry, the ripple down effect I was talking about. Changing centers messes with habits, line timing, reads on breakouts, those instinctive passes between teammates, those, they take time to build. And I think that, when the Capitals struggled with Strome out, when I've talked about them being out with Pierre-Luc Dubois out there, it's the lack of chemistry with some of these players. Some players are plug and play. Anthony Beauvillier, for example, you put him in anywhere as a forward, he thrives. Not the case for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and say expect some early game hiccups once everything gets sorted out. But there is, like I said, it's all about the next man up and opportunities that, maybe necessarily wouldn't have been presented had it not been for the injuries, is the next man up, the silver lining. This is when players can really prove their worth. I'm talking Milano, LaPierre, Protas doesn't have as much to prove, McMichael. And, they can all stake a claim. They can get put on the radar of Spencer Carbery, like, hey, we didn't get to see him. Sonny Milano, for example, being scratched. I think that Hendrix LaPierre is still in prove-it territory that, with more responsibility, then I think it's going to be interesting. And Connor McMichael as well, if he thrives at that center, second line center position, then I think that gives the Capitals more flexibility. And for any of them, if any of them step forward consistently, the team is not just surviving, they're building resilience. And everyone knows that this team needs to be resilient in all that it's faced so far. But the thing about it is Pierre-Luc Dubois and his impact, it is felt on the ice, right? But his presence and his leadership as well off the ice. And it's, kind of a cool thing to notice that Dubois has been around the group. He's been on the periphery of practice and in the locker room. And that presence matters. Having him there as a voice helps keep continuity within the group, helps keep with the chemistry going. It keeps the culture intact while they're working through these on-ice adjustments. So having him in the mix, and I don't think that he doesn't want to be here. Pierre-Luc Dubois would rather be on the ice, and I think having him there at practice, that makes it feel like he is not missing a step. So what do I want to see from the Capitals in the next stretch? I want cleaner zone exits. I want a middle of the ice support from the wingers. And I want McMichael to play with confidence. I think that he has been doing that a lot more this season. And I think that oftentimes that is questioned when you don't know if you're going to be in or out of the lineup. I think that his job with the Capitals is secure. But with that said, he still has to bring it each and every night. And that's what we're looking to see here. So that's the big thing here as well, is the players that are on the lineup that need to step up. I talked about in yesterday's show the possibility of the Capitals potentially, having to call someone up, if it's not working. I think that they have good options with Milano, and the guys that are fitting in, Ethan Frank, if called upon, that the depth is there. But if for some reason these players don't step up and there is a bit of a hiccup, then I definitely want to see what, the options they have in Hershey. I mean, we have a pretty good idea. We saw a lot of them in the preseason, so we don't continue this free fall that we have seen from the Capitals in the past few games. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about how Alex Ovechkin's slow start affects the Capitals' big picture. I'll discuss straight ahead. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making a push. So, whether you're a fan of the Wizards or you're a fan of another team in the NBA, say you want vested interest in the Wizards game or any of the games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals, like the videos, and comment anything down below, and join the Locked On Capitals Insiders. More and more of you are joining each and every day. Get direct news from yours truly in a text message. You don't have to go to a bunch of different websites. Just join the Locked On Capitals Insiders. There is more information in the show notes. And thanks for sticking with me there. Had a bit of a technical issue, but we are back and ready to go for segment 3 here. Talking about Ovi's slow start and the ripple down effect that has for the Capitals and his slow start. As I've said on the show before, as Alex Ovechkin goes, so go the Capitals. And some people are like, yeah, that's a cliche, or, that's just something that Dan says. It's true. You take a look at what Ovi did last year. The Capitals played very well. The Capitals have struggled in the offensive department. So let's talk about that in the final segment of today's show. We're talking about the impact in Ovechkin's slow start, the power play as well. These are all things that are not, panning out, shall we say, for the Capitals. I'm talking Ovechkin, his slow start. I'm talking about the power play not being at 100%. And the Capitals are struggling significantly on the man advantage as well. Over the last 4 games, they went 0 for 13. This season, the team is 6 for 40 early on. That ranks among the worst in the league. Talking about the power play there and how they turn this thing around. And, one of the things that Spencer Carbery said, and he goes, I'm going to take full credit for this, is that he doesn't plan on changing the lineups that much. Like, yeah, I know that you don't want to hear it, but this is how it's going to go. And if it does not go well, I will be the guy to hear about it. And I accept responsibility. And that's what was spoke about. Carbery stuck with the exact same first power play unit in practice, which enlisted Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, John Carlson, Tom Wilson, and Jacob Chychrun. He said he's thought about changing it, but he believes in the veteran pieces in their history. If anyone wants a quick definition of insanity, it is doing the same thing again, and again, and expecting a different result. Are the Capitals? Is Spencer Carbery insane for thinking that this could work? I think, if you're asking me, I think he's looking at history as a lesson. I know that it has seen a hiccup here this season, but big picture, those players have done great things. I just think that the team is off. It's disjointed for this reason or that. Again, you could draw a lot of lines to Ovechkin, those kind of things, but we are where we're at. And like I said, he's taking on responsibility, and he's not completely convinced shaking it up helps. I know that that's what people want to see, and I liked it. Then when all of a sudden I'm like, he's so serious about winning these games. Alex Ovechkin he's playing on the third line. Wow, this has got to do something. This has got to jumpstart it. It didn't do it. And I think that the easy thing to say is, as far as like the power play is concerned, that if you just put a bunch of different pieces in there, that you're going to see success. Maybe, or you could continue to flounder. I think as far as Spencer Carbery is concerned, he's just looking at what has worked well in the past, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will see success going forward. So that's the coaching mindset right now. Even if it's broken, don't try to fix it. As they say, don't try to fix something that isn't broken. So that's where we're at with the power play. Let's talk about Alex Ovechkin, the man, the captain, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who's in the final year of his contract, who has just, count them, 2 goals this season. That's a slow start by his standards, and a lot of people draw lines to a couple seasons ago when he had very few goals and then went on the All-Star break and found his game. Maybe, I can't say, definitively that he's going to kick in at some point. What everyone says, don't doubt the big man and all of that. I want to believe it. But with that said, I want to see a little bit of, proof of concept, if you will, that's going to happen. But Alex Ovechkin, he's not in denial. He said as much. He called it, quote, a little struggling, unquote, but he's sticking to the plan. He believes goals will come. And if you take a look at it, there's 2 ways to read this. One, Ovechkin is getting older. We know that. 21st season in the league. He's 40 years old. And you see some mechanics change. The release might be not as quick. The opportunity windows are smaller, so that's an expected reality. And number 2, this team is collectively scuffling. If the power play isn't working, the team's margin for error shrinks. And Ovechkin's chances of opportunity on the power play are getting less and less. So getting the man advantage fix helps Ovi and vice versa. Like I said, as Alex Ovechkin goes, so go the Capitals. As the Capitals power play goes, so goes Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals. Carbery's bet is patience right now. He says he's not completely comfortable, but he's giving the veterans time to find their rhythm. And, like I said, he's drawing lines to past success. He just needs them to show it again. I mean, at some point, something will change, of course, right? But for right now, I think that he is kind of adapting to the wait and see, that it has to work at some point here. But from a content perspective, here's what I would like to see. 1, simplify reads on the power play. The one-timer looks have to be cleaner. 2, get Carlson the puck more on the half wall and force the seam. 3, the wing rotation needs to create more traffic in front of the net so Ovechkin can capitalize on rebounds and tipped chances. And I know I mentioned Carlson, I mentioned Ovechkin, and a lot of people are like, get those 2 off the power play. It's not happening. Not right now, anyway. And, defensively, the team can't keep giving up cycles. If you're on the PK, you have to clear the pucks and minimize second chance shots. That pressure kills your special team's momentum. So where does the team go from here? Short term, good news, Sandin back, steady in the middle, and hope McMichael grows into the second line center job. So having Rasmus Sandin back is a big thing, and we hope that McMichael can find his groove. We hope that he can pick up the torch that Pierre-Luc Dubois left behind, and that's where we're at. But longer term, you need the power play to find any spark, whether that comes from, personnel changes or from playing, with the same guys and mix it up during the game. It has to change if there is no chemistry, shall we say, that, it is going to get a look. The same old guys on the power play will continue to be out there for now. At some point, though, I would expect a mix-up if they do not see the production that this team sorely needs, because wins in this stretch will come down to the special teams and goaltending. And I've talked about on this show as well is how many of the games of the Capitals that when, losing 4 straight would have been won if the power play converted, right? And that is something that the Capitals have struggled on this season. And, starting off great, preseason knocked it out of the park, but, this is a test of this team really early. And, like I said, I still believe that the team needs to go out and acquire, a top line forward, a center of some sort, just because we don't know, as a matter of fact, how much time Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be missing. And when you're near the bottom of the Metro and your team is not playing some of its best hockey, then you're going to need someone brought in to help right that ship. Who that player is, I guess I don't know, and how much the Capitals would have to give up. I don't want the Capitals to have to give up a whole lot, but it's really too early in the season to be giving up on the 25-26 season already. I don't think that's the case, but the power play, Alex Ovechkin, we need to see more from this team on each and every front. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. And now for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.